What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another podcast here for Own Your Own Marketing, and I'm here with the one and only Dennis Yu, and super stoked to just be, I'm super thrilled to just be with him here in the studio. What do you call this thing?
We call this the Las Vegas Penthouse Studio.
Awesome. Cool. Well, today we're going to be talking about really everything under the sun when it comes to owning your own marketing in your business, in any business, whatever business you're running. And Dennis has really, carved the way for internet marketing. You worked at Yahoo years ago, and you've worked at American Airlines, and he's really developed the search engine. And so we're going to talk about everything marketing. And really around this video, we're going to be talking about the 5 sort of steps that you should take as a business owner to identify what agencies are doing for you and how to create processes to not only, maybe replace them, but also how to keep them accountable, right? So it's not to rip on agencies, but it's really just to identify how to take control of your marketing and understand what to look for, right?
I feel like a fat man getting a shoe shine. And Mark and I, as being 7-figure agency owners, we know what the inside is, and we want to help you figure out what's going on. We're not saying that your marketing agencies are lying to you, and it's not that they're intentionally doing anything bad, but agencies that are growing fast, they often have their clients, they kind of lose track of them. And so we're going to give you some tips on 5 things that you can do to take control of that with the access, questions you need to ask, how to build a better relationship with your agency. So this is all about you being able to actually know what's going on with your marketing instead of SEO or PPC or Facebook ads being a mystery. So I think you'll find this time very valuable.
Right. And oftentimes, as business owners, we're busy doing our day-to-day things, and we want to hire the experts. We want to hire someone to fix the toilet because they know how to fix the toilet, or we want to hire the marketer who can fix the marketing challenges we're having in our business. But like you said earlier, is you don't want to just let it go completely,
right? Because
you want to have a little bit of control over it and understand, if you do go the agency route, how to keep them accountable. But if you don't go the agency route, how to actually get worth out of your marketing as well.
And we coach thousands of agencies, and a lot of the agencies don't really know much more than you do. So while you are busy with your business and you don't want to get into digital marketing and SEO and PPC and all this other stuff, there are certain things that you need to understand from a strategy standpoint, certain things that you as the business owner have to provide for that agency to be able to do a good job. And we're going to talk about these 5 things, how they fit together.
100%. So let's jump into the first one, if you don't mind. And the first one is get access to all of your assets. Okay, so that's really the first step that we've identified as a service business or any business, is to, if you're, whatever you're doing right now, you have your website, you have your Facebook, you have Google ads maybe running, and you have all these different platforms that right now are confusing to you, right? You don't want to deal with them. But that really is the first step, is just being aware of what you have out there and understanding where it's located, but then also getting the right access to it. And so, you can start to do the other things we're going to talk about. But what do you have to say about getting access to maybe the assets that we're talking about?
Agencies will say that you have access. Agencies will say that you have control, and they'll give you often this third party, this other tool that you log into, and they'll say, for your convenience, because there's so many different systems, we just created this portal that has our name on it and it has all your stats in it, and that's great, but you need to have administrator level access, ownership of your Google Ads account, of your Facebook Ads account, wherever you're running ads, and administrator access on your website, which is probably WordPress. It could be Duda, which is what agencies use, or it could be a third party, whatever it is, but you need to have administrator access. It doesn't mean that you're going to go in and change stuff. It doesn't mean that you want to go in there and try to write code, but you do need to be able to go log in with a username and password to see who has access and make sure you have access. Now, there's 4 or 5 things that agencies will say to try to play this smokescreen to not give you access. They'll say, well, it's proprietary, all the things that we have, or you don't really need to see any of that because you can just log into this other dashboard that we built, which has different stats, by the way, we'll talk about. Or, we've been managing all this kind of stuff for you, and it's blended with all these other accounts that we have, so, we want to respect the privacy of all these other clients. So, obviously we can't give you access to this one master account, which is called the MCC or Business Manager or whatnot, but you definitely can get access to your ads account. And Google and Facebook have both published guidelines specifically for agencies in this situation. Did you know that? I think it's 2013 they published these guidelines. And even before, the reason why Google published, and Facebook also a couple years later said, yeah, we agree with the same thing. The reason why they published these guidelines is because agencies would not give clients access. Why do you think agencies don't want clients to have access to these systems?
Right. Like when you start to ask yourself those questions, you start to go down roads where you're like, get skeptical, like why are they not allowing me to have access to the things that you should own? And like
you want to log in?
Yeah.
Hey, can I just log in and see? I'm not going to touch anything. No, and also a fourth reason I forgot to mention is they'll say, yeah, but if we give you access, then you might change something and then you're liable. And if you make a mistake, you can't hold us accountable for any mistakes that you make. No. I just want admin to show that I have ownership. I want to go in and look at a couple things. I'm not going to touch anything.
Yeah. Another reason I don't think you mentioned was agencies, a lot of them, they don't want to essentially have a lot of like open accounts, like a lot of users just having access to different things. And really that's just an excuse, right? That's an objection. Like you should have access to these things, whether it's your website, your Facebook ads, your Google ads, get access to the right platforms. And, before we get into the next sort of, the next step that you should look at, once you get access, you need to become aware. Like the first step to all of this is awareness. So now you're aware of what platforms you're on, where your website's hosted, where your domain is, where your Facebook ads are located, your Google ads, and so that's really the first step is being aware of what you are on and what platforms you should have access to. And that kind of rolls into our next one, which is doing a sort of a preliminary audit on those different platforms. And so whether it's your website, your Google Analytics, or Facebook ads, or Google ads, you want to do an audit of that platform. And that way you can determine whether that's consistent with the reporting that the client or that the agency is giving you, and whether that's just consistent with what where you should be. Like what is the expectation? Should I be getting X amount in results nowadays, or whatever it is? But Dennis, give us an example of what an audit might look like for Facebook ads, for example.
So we call this a quick audit process. So one of our coaching clients is a cosmetic surgeon, and the agency charged him $27,000 last month for ad spend. And I looked in the Google Analytics and I said, I see the traffic coming from Facebook. I see the leads. There's no way you guys are spending $27,000. But that's what the agency's portal said when we logged in. And they hemmed and hawed and didn't want to give us access. Eventually, we said, here's the URL that Facebook has. Here's the URL that Google says, as an agency, you need to give access to the underlying account, to the client. Here it is. We logged in. You know how much money was actually spent?
10,000?
5,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like 17,000.
And we asked the agency, so what's going on? I mean, here in your report it said we spent 27, and we logged into Facebook and it said 5, and Google was like a couple $1,000s more than that. And it was a major media company that had this portal, and they said, well, we also, gave you some impressions off of our network because we have a radio station and all these other things. Like, we have no idea. Like, we need to see what's actually being spent, right? If you're a general contractor or you're getting a house built, you need to see the underlying materials. How much did you pay for lumber and for nails and side, drywall and all that kind of stuff? And if you've got tight accounting in your business, can you imagine if you had a CFO and no one else had access to the books, and you just let the CFO spend money on strip clubs or all kinds of random kinds of stuff? There needs to be some basic accountability, and it's not too much to ask for. And it's not that you don't trust the people that are spending your money, but if they claim to be spending money, like what if they're charging you a fee of $10,000 a month and then claiming that half of it's ad spend? What if they're only spending $1,000 a month and charging you? Now all of a sudden they're making $9,000, right? And I hate to say this, I don't like to believe that people are being dishonest, but you need to go in and see the data, and this happens a lot, right? The other thing is they don't want you to, when you go in and do an audit, here's the second thing I like to look at. The first thing is I want to know how much money was actually being spent. Very easy to do. You do not have to be an expert in PPC to go in and click campaigns and see how much money was spent in the last 30 days, 90 days. Very easy to run this report, right? Anyone can do it, right? Second thing you can do in Google or Facebook or any ad system, go to the bottom left or into settings and you can see the account history or change history, and it'll list anytime someone has changed a bid, made a new ad, did something to the account, added a new user, and what you're typically going to find. So this part here, I'm glad you're here listening to this because I want you to do this. The majority of the time, 90+% of the time, when we come in and we look at the account history and look at changes that have been made in the ad account, nothing has been done in the last 3 months. And the changes that we do see, they're ticky-tack changes. Like change the bid,
Small
increase
little
this
things.
budget
Yeah.
to, by $5. Not real campaign changes by someone who actually knows what they're doing. Someone who's doing strategic level optimization things. They're changing the copy. They're testing different landing pages. They're doing things that require a strategic understanding instead of like, I'm just adding keywords, or I'm just increasing this bid here, or changing the budget. Those are all ticky-tack things that don't count. I'm looking for evidence of someone who is strategically managing that ad account and is in there at least a couple times a month.
Right.
Because what happens with Marko and I both know this. If you're an agency, you know this is true. You don't want the clients to know this. They put in all the effort in the first few weeks building the ads out, and once they're running and all that, no one touches it. That's the dirty secret. So go in and look. Maybe you've got a great agency, but either way, go in. Once you get access, like Marko said, step 1, step 2, go in, see how much money is being spent, and see, is anyone watching?
Yeah.
I saw an account, I'm not going to name it, but it's a Fortune 500 company. They make beer, and no one had touched their ads in over a year. The agency was billing millions. And I said, Carl, no one's optimized the ads in a year. Your quality score went down to a 1. Your CPCs have skyrocketed because the ads have burnt out. And they burnt out within the first 2 weeks, and they've been running for a whole year, and nobody's been watching.
Yeah.
But they didn't have access until I said, get access for the agency, Carl.
Yeah. That brings a really good point. So you said there's really 2 main things that you'd want to look at. Like if you're the business owner, if you're the business who bought from an agency, or
because those are very easy. It takes you 30 seconds to find. You do not need to be an expert to be able to look at those 2 things I just mentioned.
So number 1 is how much to spend on the campaign during a given time.
And I'm going to compare
period.
what the agency said was spent versus what actually was spent.
Right. And that kind of brings into our third point, which is like, do the dots line up?
Yeah.
Do the dots line up with what the agency is telling you and what the reporting is telling you and what actual reality is?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is the difference between that? And once you figure out that, you'll quickly start to figure out whether you can keep them accountable or you need to move on, right?
Yeah.
Now, the second thing you said was the change history.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, as a business, you got to optimize your ads or, change up your website or SEO, for example. There's going to be things on the website. There's going to be things off the website. And you want to see progress. And change history, like you said, is going to be like this... Is primarily going to be the first thing you should look at.
Is anyone in the account? Is anyone looking?
Like, is this ghost town, or is it, is stuff actually happening? And typically the accounts that are working really well are the ones who do have a lot of change history.
Yeah, but I'll make one comment because I know a bunch of agencies are dying to retort to what I'm saying because Google with Performance Max and Advantage Plus on Facebook and whatnot, the optimization is increasingly being done by the networks themselves. So it takes longer. It is true. I can already hear the comments, oh yeah, but this. Yes, it is true. It takes longer for the campaigns to be able to optimize. And sometimes with PMAX campaigns, you have to wait like 6 weeks and you don't touch anything. And the other retort, which is super common, is, oh, the campaigns are working really well. We don't need to touch anything. They work really well. Because if you touch it too many times, you reset the quality score. And that's a sign of like, you don't want a heart surgeon that's like constantly reopening the wound and then going in there and then closing the wound and reopening the wound. Like you want you don't want a heart surgeon who takes, 1,000 more cuts than the pro heart, because it means that they don't really know what they're doing, right? So that's not necessarily testing. So it is true that just because no one's touched the ad account in the last 90 days doesn't mean the performance sucks. But there's a high likelihood that if no one's looking at it, there are changes in Google and Facebook. Competitors change, ads get disapproved. Like there's got to be maintenance, okay? Someone's got to be in there looking. And you can see who's been doing it. Typically, you're talking to an account manager. That's like a sales rep, basically. And the person doing the work is this other person who has some foreign name. And that person who has that foreign name, I don't mean to be xenophobic, is usually not someone who understands your goals, content, and targeting. So if they're messing around inside the ad account and they don't understand specifics about your business and your city and your specific set of services, you could be a painting contractor, but they're not all the same. Or a landscaper. They don't all offer exactly the same services. You're a doctor. Not all doctors are the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. They don't know your unique selling points.
Yeah.
Like,
and there's certain things that you don't do, right? There's certain offers that you don't have a $99 special or whatever it might be, and maybe other guys do. So, if you don't have that ad access, you won't be able to see that those kinds of ads are running. And they happen all the time at the best agencies, right? Marco, how many times does it happen where there's like a goof up, right? You've got hundreds of accounts and, someone who's relatively new at media buying, they make a mistake. It happens all the time with me too. I see it all the time. This is something people don't want to admit. Do you know what they call the student who graduates last at medical school?
No.
Doctor. So in agencies, there are people that are running ad campaigns that are new. That's just how it is, and they make mistakes. And you'll easily catch these things without being an expert.
You just got to know 1% more than everybody else.
Yeah, and they know almost nothing.
Yeah.
We know this because we teach thousands of agencies how to do ads and how to do audits and all this kind of stuff here. And in our training, we teach them these 5 particular components so that when a client starts asking questions, the agencies don't like, oh no, Marcos, it must be like, now they're on to us, right? What are we going to do? We got to play hide and go seek because clearly they've been talking to someone like Dennis or Marco and they're going to uncover that we haven't done a very good job. What are we going to do,
And that's another thing, let's tap on that a little bit here, is when you become more aware personally of, the different platforms and kind of the idea of being aware of all of this and knowing how to move with your agency, they're going to realize that, right? Mm-hmm. Your agency is going to be able to feel that out. The account manager is going to be like, wow, okay, this person is...
They know what they're doing, so we better give this guy a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
Here's another little secret. In every agency, big or small, they could be like a good agency or whatever. In any agency, they usually have 1 or 2 ringers, people who are really good at the ads. Mm-hmm. And that's just how it is. Like anytime you have a class of like 30 people, there's a couple people that are good and the other people are like whatever, and then some people that suck. So when you show that you care, then you're more likely to get that 1 or 2, like the couple people on the team, those are going to be more likely to be assigned to your account. And whenever we work with because we work with a lot of agencies, I always demand the best account managers and the best engineers and the best of whatever category is, because I know if I don't say something, they're going to assign me some random media buyers, some random creative, some random, because there's only, in any agency, there's only a few people that are good. This is a fact. I'm sure in your company, you have a few people who are really good contractors and the other ones are like, okay, right? Mm-hmm. You have a few really good closers, a few, like in any area, you always have, it's an 80-20. You have like a few people that are good and the rest are average and then some people suck. You want the good people from that agency to be working on your account.
Yeah. And so the more aware you are and kind of the battles you choose to fight throughout that vendor-client relationship, then...
Even asking these questions sends a signal like, oh, we better put our best guy on Marco's account. Right?
Yeah. Let's put the best media buyer on this account.
Yeah, because they're asking questions.
Let's make sure he's making changes in there, know.
And you don't have to demonstrate PPC expertise. Merely asking a few of these questions that we're giving you is enough.
Yeah. And it's not to antagonize your marketing agency.
No.
All roads lead home to just having a more effective strategy and getting more out of your marketing. And whether that's working with an agency or not, it's just what's in the best interest for XYZ company, whatever it is that you do. And I think agencies would appreciate that, if you do bring it up, and because it kind of puts them back in their place.
Yeah.
Because a lot of agencies kind of they onboard a lot of clients and they grow, and they kind of have those clients where they just put them on the back burner, but the clients are like don't know what's happening.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm sure you can relate to that. So
we've had that too.
Yeah, exactly. So like the clients that are like quiet and you're almost like betting, like these agencies are betting on clients not speaking up. And the reason why is so they can put them in a corner and kind of just treat them like another number, right? And it's not like, it's the nature of the business, right?
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the business. Yeah. But it's your duty as a service business or whatever you're doing. You're paying a couple $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month to an agency. It's your duty to get the best ROI you can. And so speak up. You're going to get better people on your account. And also, that goes into kind of the next one is like how to sort of hold them accountable, you know? So let's talk about different things you should speak with maybe your account manager, because this account manager is not going to be the most technical savvy guy or woman. And so like, Dennis, what would you say, like, what are the conversations you should have with that? You know, let's say you identify the assets and there's nothing unethical happening here, but it's just an idea of like, you're not getting the time you think you should be getting. What should we be talking about with these agencies?
Well, first thing, you can't just blame the agency. Because the most important thing is you, as a client, have to give them what they need, your goals, content, and targeting. Of all the services, what are your unique selling propositions? If they're asking you to make videos, or asking you to collect testimonials, or asking you to post to the Google My Business, or asking you for whatever, like, you have to do those particular components. They don't have that kind of ESP. You can't just, you know, write a check and expect someone to do SEO for you. This is an involved kind of thing. Like, I wish I could hire a personal trainer that could work out for me. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And it's a two-way relationship. It's a partnership. So the first thing I would ask, whether it's the account manager or maybe if it's a smaller agency that has like less than 50 people, I'm talking to one of the owners or principals, is do we agree on transparency? Danny Barrera made a very heartfelt Instagram post a couple hours ago that we saw, and he said that we only want to work with clients that understand that we're being completely honest, and every failure, every win, this is exactly how we are. And if you don't like that and you want to be lied to or have smoke blown up your butt, then go with these other agencies, because we're being honest about here's exactly, you know, how we're going, right? And let's have these honest conversations, because that's together how we improve. Just like in any relationship, a husband, wife, a son, like, you need to have this kind of ground level honesty and transparency, which means if there's problems, and you know, maybe we say like, hey, we know you guys have been growing really fast. We're so proud of that. Like, we love having an agency that is financially stable, because that means they're going to be around to take good care of us. But at the same time, we do require transparency. So if they don't agree with that, then it's just not going to work out in the long term. And it may be the account managers, they're just an employee. They're collecting a salary. They're not an owner. They're just doing their job, right? You would never like yell at the Verizon rep on the phone just because the Verizon service went down. It wasn't their fault, right? So understand when you're talking to the account manager, that person's just doing their job. If you have a question about PPC, the account manager doesn't know anything about that. They went through some simple training that you probably even know more than they do, because they've never even been in the account themselves either, right? So it may require some escalation, because maybe they have some kind of like team lead or some operations manager who's in charge of account managers, and it's totally okay to escalate, right? And it's not like you're complaining. It's not like the account manager's in trouble. Maybe you have been with this agency for a year or whatnot, and you could say, you know what, it's my fault. I never set expectations about how I would like reporting, and I didn't set you guys up to succeed by giving you the ingredients that you need to do your job as an agency. So you're not blaming the agency, but you're saying, I just want to make sure we're super clear on these expectations. I expect a weekly report from you on performance metrics. I don't want the canned report that comes from your SEO tool that automatically generates the thing.
You don't want like the impressions and all this other
I want real metrics. I want to know how many calls there are. I want to be able to log into the call rail or whatnot, listen to the calls. I want to see inside the CRM, is it HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, ServiceTitan, I don't know, whatever the system is where the money's being tracked and the jobs are being done, I want to be able to see the revenue, right? And I want to know that you guys have access and you're optimizing to the revenue. And not just taking credit when people are searching on my company's name, which is called branded search, or when people are already coming in because it's a referral or whatever. I want you as the agency to be able to show me, based on your efforts, that you are driving incremental sales calls and revenue for me. The agency should be able to do that. It is not on you to figure out attribution and all this other stuff. You give them the ingredients and access. They, in turn, should be able to give you a weekly report. A lot of agencies set up this canned weekly report that the system generates.
Like automatic.
Right. That's not enough. Part two is I need to know that a human is analyzing this and saying, well, here's what I've learned, and here's why this ad is doing better than this other ad. Here's why this particular service is doing better. Here's why we're getting more book calls. I want to know why. I need some thinking. And the computer and the AI can't quite do that yet, right? And then the third part here, and this is what nails most agencies, I need to see what you have actually done. Don't just show me like all the stats and all that. Yes, I care about performance and data and all that, but I need to see what you've done. and I need to see logical thinking behind that. So we call this metrics, analysis, action. Metrics can only occur when you have access to the raw data and everyone's on the same page, yeah? Analysis is a human is interpreting what's going on and doing testing and optimizing. Only a human can do that right now. Yes, automated software can change bids and do that kind of stuff. But a human understands the creative. A human understands why people buy and they don't and makes these kinds of adjustments. And then the action is taken from that smart, considered human analysis, which is primarily done by people in the United States. We're big fans of VAs. We hire thousands of VAs. But this kind of analysis, at this point, I believe has to be done mainly by people in the United States.
Yeah. They got to utilize the, like it's logical thinking, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, this happens, so we're going to do X, Y,
It's a
and Z.
strategic understanding. It's not just logical thinking like math or analytics or programming. That can be done offshore. But the understanding of why people buy and why customers gravitate towards your business and what this one person said versus this other person said in a testimonial or podcast or whatever, that requires a certain level of nuance with American culture and wording and irony and humor. Like all of these things are very hard for someone who doesn't speak English as their first language.
Right.
And I'm one of the biggest proponents of VAs. And I'm telling you, the strategic part needs to be handled by someone who really, ideally, has been to your city and understands the culture, has watched Seinfeld, these kinds of things, right?
Yeah. Something you said earlier was, don't blame the agency, right?
Right.
Like, obviously, as a business owner, you're the one who bought from that marketing company, right? You bought from them. Maybe they sold you on big outcomes, right? But you ultimately bought from them, and it's your duty to at least follow through on that, right? And see it all the way throughout. And obviously the person you're assigned to, your point of contact, is not going to have all the answers for you. That's just how it's going to be. And so if it needs to get escalated, like you're talking about, keep it calm, collected, right? Don't blame the agency, because anyways, from what I've seen is, and maybe, I'll have you explain, is like, from what I've seen, if a business blames the agency and is really outlandish in that regard, or just kind of out of pocket, it doesn't help the cause, right?
Right.
Your goal is to get more phone calls, more clicks, more direction clicks, whatever it is, right? And if that's your goal, you being outlandish with an account manager is not going to help the cause.
That's yelling at the American Airlines flight attendant, for the flight being late. It's not her fault. Yeah.
Even though that account manager is really, really close to the PPC person or the Facebook ads media buyer or the team lead for whatever it is, just don't treat them like that, because that doesn't help you as a business get a better ROI, right? Like I can totally understand how you might be feeling, but just accept that as reality. Just go with the flow and escalate if you need to.
Yeah. So to add to what Marko was saying, I've seen some people that have followed the techniques, the 5 steps that we talked about here, and they discover all kinds of mistakes. And then they get so mad and they say, this is, I put everything, blood, sweat, and tears into this business. My dad started this business. I've spent $200,000 with you guys. I'm just so mad, because, they take it really personally because it's their money. And then they say, I'm going to sue you, and you're going to have to refund me $200,000 or whatever the number is. Maybe that is the right approach, and maybe isn't, but I'd first say, why don't you start back with the fundamentals? The agency, no one is trying to scam you, but incompetence often happens, right? Just like medical malpractice. Sometimes they cut the wrong leg off. Sometimes, these things happen. The nurse is not trying to kill you. So go back to the first principle of, do we agree that honesty and transparency are what's important? Because in a relationship, especially in digital marketing, things are up and down, right? There's any agency that pretends like everything's perfect all the time and they've mastered everything and they don't have any problems is lying to you, right? But when we're like, even in your business, there's no perfection. Sometimes you have to redo a job. Sometimes you mess up. Someone leaves you a negative review. You understand these things happen. But if you start with transparency, which then leads to access, and together we can look at these things and we can look at the things that we mentioned here, and together we can discuss this, then we can have some kind of resolution and now agree, all that stuff's under, water under the bridge, but going forward, this is how we're going to optimize. And I apologize, I didn't tell you what a new new jobs worth to us, right? Maybe it's worth 15,000 in revenue, but really I can't, because of my margins at 15%, I really can't pay more than $1,700. I really want to pay like $600 per new job. Like, you didn't tell them that, whatever the numbers are. So how could they optimize for you? That's on you, right? So there's things on you and things on them. So you can't put it all on them. But at the same time, I've seen other people, like my friend Philip Cadu. He's a San Diego physical therapist. He paid this other agency, Go Be Rewarded, for like 12 months or something like that. And he basically, Philip went out of business, went bankrupt, because this agency just, I don't want to say scammed, but took all this money and didn't deliver anything after Philip went through these 5 steps that we talked about. Now, this guy didn't want to make things right. He kept saying, well, you know, we are proud of our work and we can't give you access because it's proprietary, and, you know, it's on you because we can't control, you know, if we drive the phone calls and you don't close the deal, we can't control that, like all these different excuses. But there was enough wrong on the agency side. I mean, it's always, you know, a two-way street. There's always issue on both sides.
Always,
But Philip, to make the point, Philip said, yeah, but I hired the agency and I feel like it was my fault and I want to be polite and I don't want to say anything or make waves. And I said, there's enough fault with these guys that they really should apologize and make things right. So we met with the agency, and to give them a chance, we laid out all this stuff. We said, look, here's some very basic things. These are standards on how you run Google ads. These are standards on how you build websites. The website doesn't even load properly on mobile. Like, all these things are wrong. Like, these are standards. We're not here to put you on the defensive. But what Philip wants to do, because he basically drained his life savings to pay you guys, is he just wants to be able to get more clients, right? He's a physical therapist. He's done 7,000 massages and all this kind of, you know, to help people who have chronic pain and all this. He just wants it to be done right. He's not trying to sue you. Will you guys be willing to make it right? And they said, no, we're not going to do anything because our work is so good. And the guy was so proud. And I said, okay, well, now, Philip, you are justified. So it's all based on how look, agencies are always messing up. The whole point of testing is we're always learning, right? Testing by definition is controlled failure, right?
Yep.
But see, how does the agency react? The account manager is probably not the one who can talk on behalf of the agency. They're usually, I've seen this situation hundreds of times. So this is not, like, for you, you've never seen this before. So it might be, oh, it's like dramatic or whatever. It's not, trust me, it's not that big of a deal. Approach it the way Marko said. If you find these problems, if they don't give you access, if you find that no one's touching the accounts, if you find that, you know, there's all these other things that you can find in this thing that we call a quick audit, and say, hey, look, you know, we're not here to fire you. We just want to work together to be successful. Right. And do you agree to these basic sorts of things, which Google and Facebook said?
Yeah, and the whole idea of all of this, right? It just all the roads lead home.
Yeah.
To what does it cost to acquire a customer, and what does it cost in marketing? You know, like, and is there an ROI here?
Right.
You know, and so, you know, with the Philip example, he obviously wasn't getting an ROI.
Right.
He wasn't getting a return. He wasn't getting customers. He wasn't getting phone calls, or he wasn't at least getting the end result. But a lot of the things were ignored for a long period of time, you know? And so the more equipped you are and the more aware you are of these steps here, the better off you're going to be, right? You're going to be a more successful business owner. You're going to be able to take control of your marketing, whether you hire an agency or not, right? And going into sort of the last thing I want to talk about, which is, you know, now that you've had access to everything and you've audited everything and you've tried to keep your agency accountable, and you're at, you know, maybe you're at that level, right, where you want to just kind of bring things in-house, or at least be able to maybe get a VA or two to help you out with some things as well. And we talk about creating processes, right? So creating processes for part of your marketing, the things that are low-hanging fruit that will move your business forward, with which, you know, maybe the low-hanging fruit opportunities could be the good ones to start out with. And obviously, depending on the business you're in, there's going to be different things you want to do. But Dennis, I mean, you're the expert with VAs and everything like that. But what is, you know, what do we mean by that when we say create processes internally to sort of maximize your advertising, for example, or things like that? So
you have processes on how jobs are booked and how customers are being taken care of and how things are fulfilled and how you collect reviews and how you order materials and how you hire people and how you exit people. And you have processes in your company. You typically have a director of operations or whatnot. Why wouldn't you have the same level of rigor with processes in your marketing? And processes, especially working with other people like your marketing agency. Processes are best when there's a gap between one function and another function, especially between one organization and another organization. So you might be expecting that your agency has amazing processes and they're going to tell you exactly what they need from you, when they need it. But I'm telling you, most agencies, they might have like okay processes, and the processes are probably more around getting you as a client, and then afterwards it's a little bit sloppy in the fulfillment.
Right.
So it's up to you to make sure that you are tying those process components together, right? So instead of you having to rebuild the wheel from scratch, we have created processes that we've gathered from, you know, the Danny Barreras and Josh Nelsons and all the top other agency people out there. And you know what? These processes are all very similar. Why? Because the underlying components of helping a website rank and running Google ads and getting phone calls and tracking it in the CRM, like all those things are basically the same. Even though your business is a little bit different, the processes are the same. The ingredients flowing through the systems, the people using the processes are different, but the processes are actually all almost the same from a marketing standpoint, right? So when you have agreement with the agency, then it's very clear, here's what we do, here's what you do, and here's what the account manager does, here's what your PPC person does, here's what our operations person says, here's what our head of sales says. Like you understand the different roles and how they fit together, and now you're able to work together as a partner. Because if you want to have a great relationship, you kind of have to understand what they do, and they have to understand what you do. Don't assume just because they handle, you know, plumbing HVAC companies that they understand how your plumbing HVAC company works. Do not make that assumption.
Very different.
And maybe the company does overall, but that's a new account manager and they don't know, and they're in their second month on the job.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little bit of a competitive advantage to be working with like a niche agency or somebody who at least has a familiarity of like what exactly it is that you do. But your business is a lot different than the shop down the road, you know? And so your unique selling points and, you know, your sales process and what your salespeople and what your internal customers believe about your business is different than the other clients that they have. And so those conversations need to be happening. But I want to preface this as well, just kind of, I know we're kind of coming towards the end here, is like, by no means is this to rip on agencies or anything like that. This is just to create awareness around your actual marketing and understand some of the fundamentals yourself. That way you can protect yourself, you can protect your business, and you always see, you know, there's sad stories like fill up all the time everywhere. And so you don't want to be that, obviously, and, you know, just equip yourself. Let's do these 5 steps, right? We'll help you out with that too. But look at those 5 steps, start with awareness, getting access to everything, and end off with creating processes, whether you're working with that agency ongoing. What's the meeting cadence? You know, what is the performance report cadence? Are you getting one once a week, and what's in it, right? We don't want just click numbers. We want result, right? How many phone calls did we get? How many leads did we get? And what was the percentage of those that turned into customers, you know? And those are the types of numbers you should be getting. And then also the transparency. So like if your agency agrees and has a core value of transparency and communication, and you have that too, then there's a good chance you could work out together really well.
Just like in any marriage, you know, it's never perfect all the time. And when you have a clear set of rules on how you communicate and who's doing what, then often things that look like friction are really just miscommunication. You know, the majority of the time when there's conflict, it can go back to miscommunication. And clear processes and checklists, I can't tell you enough how important they are. Even if you're a pilot, you're a 747 pilot and you make $600,000 a year and you've flown for 20 years, you betcha every time they're flying, they're going through that pre-flight checklist. And checklists your agency should be using, they should be able to share those checklists, they should be publishing the checklist, it shouldn't be twisting arms to get those checklists. You can also provide checklists for what things that you need. They should be giving you checklists on what you need to do that you can assign to other people on your team, so you as the business owner are not having to be involved in every little nitty-gritty detail unless you just like doing that, right? And everything runs by these checklists and SOPs. And that's why the checklist that we provide to the agencies, you should probably look at just to see, so you understand and have appreciation for some things that you might think would take a day or two actually take months, like certain things with the website. Now you see like, oh, there's a whole checklist, and I can see why that takes months, right? And you can see why they need certain things from you at certain points instead of just randomly doing whatever, right?
Yeah, no, that's so important. Is like when you become more aware, you know, if you're watching this video this long already, then you're obviously accepting that we should become more aware.
Yeah.
And so it's reality now. So now you're more aware, and you're going to know the types of things to tell your agency.
Right.
And equip them with the right information about your business. For example, the products you use, what your margins are like, what you can afford in terms of cost to acquire a customer. And so you'll figure out, you know, based on that information, what your cost per result needs to be, based on your lead conversion and all that other stuff. And so that way we can be more productive with these conversations with the account managers and, you know, operations people at the agency, so you can maximize your marketing efforts.
And then to know what distinguishes you. Maybe you have a really key customer. Maybe you're friends with the mayor. Maybe you sponsored a Little League team. Maybe you're known for offering 24/7 service on the weekends and other people don't do that. There's all these different things that you need to tell them because they don't have this kind of ESP. And that's how you become a good partner. So you have to do certain things internally. Even if you have an agency, the biggest thing I see with companies that do less than 5 million is they think, you know what, I don't need to do anything with marketing because I'm just paying this agency. You know, Marko is so good, I don't have to do anything, I just write him a check and abracadabra, a rabbit comes out of the hat, right? No, there's things that you have to do, and there's things that fall between the cracks. Because there's things that you assume the agency's doing, and then the agency's assuming that you're doing certain things. For example, collecting testimonials and making little videos and having your technicians gather these little things along the way. The agency can't do that because they're not in the vans and trucks and they're not, you know, contractors on site. You guys have to collect that kind of stuff. And that's got to be able to get to the agency and organize in a certain way, right? They can't use AI to generate that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think ultimately, you know, as a business, whether you're small, you're doing $40,000 a month, or you're a large company that's doing $500,000 a month, or at least somewhat large in service industries. And so, you know, it doesn't matter what size you are, whether you're below those or above it or in between or whatever. And the goal is obviously to grow. The goal is to create more revenue, more profit, and so you can pour more back in and scale, right? And so obviously it's a win for you to understand these concepts. But also, like, let's talk about briefly before we end off here is, you know, as a company at the different stages, right? Let's say $0 to $83,000 a month, which is $1 million company. So $0 to $1 million a year, and then probably like $1 million to like 10 million a year, and then at 10 million and above. And obviously, depending on the industry you're in, and depending on how you want to grow and how aggressive you are at growing, you're gonna have different sort of philosophy of running the business. You'll have different questions and different things you'll need to answer. But the first thing I want to say is, like, if you're a smaller business from 0 to 83K a month, or $1 million business, then especially on the lower end there, like the lower 80%, where you're like 0 to 50K, like, it's so hard to buy from an agency. And
it's so hard for the agencies to deliver too. It's hard on both sides.
Right, it's hard. And the reason why is because tiny budgets and retainer fees are high. So you got to think, you got retainer fees, you got ad spend. And if there's no ad spend, then they're selling you something called SEO, which we all know about, intangible SEO. But when you have high retainer and leaves you with little to no ad spend left, it doesn't allow you for any spend to acquire customers.
There's not much room for the agency to be able to help, because if they're charging $3,000 and then you have ad spend of, you know, $1,500 on top of that, it might seem like $3,000 is a lot when you're a solopreneur or you just have a couple contractors and it's a small family-run business. You're like, that's $3,000 a month. Think of all the things I could do with $3,000. But the way agencies are structured, only a third of that can go to labor. So just like when you go to a restaurant, like a third of it's the food cost, and you have overhead and sales and all these other sorts of things. So if they charge you $3,000, they only have $1,000 to be able to actually do the work. And for a small company, that's a huge chunk of your revenue that you're putting in the marketing, and you probably need results right away. Like you're checking every few days. You can't wait 6 months for SEO to kick in. You can't wait for PPC to take 2 or 3 months. So it's very hard. It's kind of this danger zone for agencies that charge only $1,000 or $2,000 a month, especially to the smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Because the small businesses are you can hire them just to do social media.
Yeah.
But you still have the expectation that it's driving sales.
Yeah.
And that's why the average churn, as Marko knows, is 90 days. So the average is a third of customers that sign in on low retainers churn out each month.
Yeah. And the reason why that's the case is because it's on both parties.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's on both. And I think ultimately, if you're a business owner listening to this, like, it's in your best interest to do what's right for your company. Okay? And so, like, if you hire an agency and it doesn't work in 2 months and you can't afford them anymore, don't hire the agency.
Right. And the agency has onboarding costs. They have to train people. They have to pay their salespeople. There's like all these different costs and overhead, just like you have to acquire a customer. The math is just really hard for you and for them. So you might consider hiring someone from a local high school, learning how to do a little of the marketing yourself, hiring a virtual assistant that just executes some of these basic components that they would have done themselves. It doesn't mean you become a digital marketing agency, but when you're small, word of mouth and reputation and very basic PPC is all you really need, especially like if you're in a category for local service ads. You don't need an agency to set up local service ads.
Yeah, and those will drive leads.
Yeah,
like
all day. Even agencies didn't know that, and they've been around for years. LSA has been around for years.
Yeah.
You don't need to do everything. You don't need to be on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. When you are under $80,000 a month, you basically need local service ads if you can, then Google ads, then Facebook ads, and all the other stuff like YouTube and whatever. All these cool Twitter, whatever. You don't need any of that. Okay,
they're all shiny objects.
Yeah.
Now, once you're at the $1 million run rate, right? You can start to dabble and make a little bit more risks.
Yeah.
Right.
Then an agency can come in. You can afford to have an agency.
Yeah. But then go through those 5 steps, hold them accountable, and don't be that terrible client to them.
Yeah.
But hold them accountable like they should be. And now you can at least eat the cost for a month or 60 days before you have to let it go because it's not working or whatever. And that way, as long as you both are on the same side with transparency and communication, then and that they know their stuff, right? They're not just some imposter, And so now you can work with them. You can talk to them each week, each month about your business, your unique selling points, and you can strategize on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, obviously, if you're doing all of those things right and you're still not getting results in 3 months, then you might need to search for another agency. But I think ultimately, the whole conversation we're trying to make is that once you're over $1 million a year, you can start to dabble with some marketing agencies. And then once you get to, like, I don't know, Dennis, what do you think? 5, 10, 20 million?
7 to 10 million, depending on the industry and the margin, you can start to have your own marketing team. And agencies will start to seed that because they'll see that the client will hire a head of marketing. And once the agency sees the client's hired a head of marketing who's going to hire other people, pretty soon we know, and usually within 45 to 60 days, that head of marketing will then fire the agency. This is just what happens. It's a natural part of growth. Agencies don't like that kind of churn, but they know it happens. That's why they're constantly acquiring more customers. And even though you might grow past that point and hire your own internal marketing team, you can still be a great reference client. And agencies that aren't small-minded love referencing other companies. Like we had WWE as a client, right? We had the Golden State Warriors. We had these other companies, Red Bull, Nike. We had these guys as clients. And they grew and grew to the point where they brought all the stuff that we did in-house. Like we took the United States Concealed Carry Association from 6 million to 65 million, mainly off of Facebook ads. What happened when they hit 65 million? They hired a whole team of internal marketing people and brought it all in-house and then had us just for consulting along the way to audit the team. So if you're an agency watching this, don't be afraid of a client that's bringing things in-house, because the people they're bringing in, if you have a good relationship like we talked about, then they're going to look to you to hire people that follow the processes and can take over the processes that you put in place. If you didn't publish those processes, then this new marketing person is going to do whatever their thing is because that's what they were comfortable with doing. But if you were involved at every step of the way and you help them hire VAs, right? If you're the agency and you help them hire VAs, you help the client build internal processes to collect the content that's necessary for the agency to do their part, guess who the client's going to lean on to hire more staff? They're going to keep using the same tools and processes and things that you put in place. But if you're playing hide and go seek, I'm talking as if, if the agencies that are listening, if you're playing hide and go seek, that client has no incentive to stay with you, right? So actually being transparent allows you to have what Marko and I call a lighthouse client. You're a great reference client because now the client can say, yeah, I started with Marko's agency and I grew and I built my internal team and I keep using these processes as we've scaled. Yeah. And that's a great message to other companies that are not at 10 million or 15 million.
So don't burn the bridges if a client is sort of, moving to the next stage.
Yeah.
Right? And not all businesses do that. Like businesses there's plenty of companies over 7 to 10 million or whatever number you mentioned that still hire agencies, And I think you should always, right? You should always be testing.
There's
once you have the new that type of revenue, you can make more risks and you can tolerate more, if you will.
Yeah.
But what would you tell, because I have to imagine 80% of the market is in smaller businesses, right? So, let's just call it $0 to $1 million a year.
Right.
What would you tell that person who is currently working with an agency, or at least maybe churned through, a couple of different agencies in the past? What would you tell them, as we kind of close out here?
Number one thing is focus on the business metrics. So wherever the revenue is coming from, back to the phone calls, where are you driving that ROI? You don't need to be on every single social media channel and react to whatever Gary Vaynerchuk is saying. It's probably going to be LSA, Google Ads. If you've been around for at least a few years and have great reviews, then things related to SEO, but you don't hire someone to do SEO. Ranking and search is the result of doing all these things like being good at business and taking care of your customers. And see if that agency is actually able to help you with the business metrics. Now, usually if you're small, you're probably hiring an agency that you can only afford, $1,000 or $2,000 a month.
Smaller one.
And they'll probably be doing mainly social media. That usually doesn't work.
It's like less revenue producing.
Yeah, and then the social media agencies churn because, they make these huge promises. I'm not saying all social media agencies do this, but this happens like 90% of the time. And so the business owner's like, okay, yeah, I need social media and maybe I can go viral. And after a couple months, they're like, you know what, I can't keep paying this because I'm not seeing the results. And then they churn out. That's why there's a 90-day churn. It's not a 60-day churn because the business owner's like, okay, I'll give you another month. I'll give you another. Oh, please, we'll give you another month for free. Okay, fine, right? But for businesses under 2 million, you need to focus on Google. Google for paid, Google for organic. I'm a former search engine engineer. I built the analytics at a search engine 25 years ago. I'm a little bit biased. But yes, if you do social media and you love social media, use social media as a content creation vehicle that then powers your SEO. So you can't hire someone to do SEO. Did you hear me clearly on that? You cannot hire someone to do SEO. I'm a search engine engineer telling you this. What you instead do is you empower your people to collect content. You as the owner should be making cell phone kind of vertical videos like this, right? Not Hollywood kinds of things. You don't need to hire a videographer. And then that content can be pushed out, turned into ads, all that kind of stuff. That can be done by a virtual assistant. I think anyone under 2 million, this may piss off some agencies, I think clients that are under 2 million should probably try to do it with a VA or two until they get to the point where they can afford to have an agency. Now, if you're an agency and you're taking people on for super cheap, you're not making enough margins to be able to hire the best people. I coach a bunch of agencies and I know some people, I won't name them, who they said, but I can't hire A-level account managers and I can't hire the best PPC people because I can't afford them. And I said, yes, because you're charging these clients these super low numbers and you need to raise your price, serve a higher tier client so you can have higher quality staff, right? Yeah. I mean, you understand that's how the math works. The same is true in your business. If you cut your prices in half, what does that say about the quality of the people you can hire?
Your technicians.
You're going to cut some corners somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
You don't want a cut rate doctor doing your heart surgery, do you?
Yeah, you don't want the person who failed medical school being your doctor.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it all applies here, you know, and like you said, if you're a smaller business, it's not a bad thing. You just have to identify that that's where you are, and it's in your best interest to go to YouTube, go to some of the free guides we have, and really just get yourself aware, at least become 1% better than everybody else at it. And it's not that hard, right? It's actually pretty made easy.
It's 80-20. You don't need to learn everything about digital marketing. There's just a few basic things you need to learn, and the rest is noise.
Especially for your industry. You know, like if you look at specific industries, you know, let's take for instance, like plumbing. We're in $500,000 plumbing business. Like literally the steps should be, you know, get your basic website up, get your social media profiles all secured, get your Google business profile set up and optimized. There's YouTube videos on that stuff. There's checklists that we probably have on that as well.
Yeah, we're happy to give you all those.
And then go run some LSA, local service desk. You turn it on, manage the platform.
So
you don't need an
easy.
agency to do it.
Yeah, main thing is answer the phone calls quickly, not automated. But
And
with a real person.
as you start getting business from it and trust in the process, increase your spend, double it, triple it, and then get yourself to a size where it's manageable, where now you can start to do these 5 steps like we talked about with an agency.
Yeah, you don't need all that extra overhead at this point. Just focus on a few basic things, do them really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. I think this was really, really good for everybody here. And let us know in the comments what you guys think about this. If you guys want to see us expand on this, I feel like we kind of beat the dead horse a little bit there. But for those who have been living under a rock and don't know where you are, where to find you, just give us, give the audience a little bit of a spiel about what it is that you do and kind of where people can find you.
So I retired 20 years ago. I was very lucky to be one of the first people at Yahoo. And as a search engine engineer, I learned that a lot of my friends went to Google. And that's when I knew we were in trouble at Yahoo, because people would ask questions and they'd say, go Google it. And I'm, oh crap. And a lot of my friends who I trained up went to Google, then later Google IPO'd, and some of them made $100 million in that IPO. And I didn't make that much money, with Yahoo's. But if you want to find me, go Google me, right? Google my name, Dennis Yu spelled Y-U, and you'll see a full knowledge panel show up. And this is what you may associate with celebrities, but this is something that I think you should have as well, because people are going to Google you. People are going to Google your company. Google's moving towards AI-generated search, which is based on that panel view. If you Google my name and you see those panels show up, everything, because Google has to adjust because of all this AI, ChatGPT stuff, that's stuff that you have to start to adapt to, and agencies don't know how to do it because it's all new. And if you follow the techniques that Marko and I share here, these are very simple techniques, you will start to feed Google what it needs, because it comes from your own internal content creation, which only you can do. The agency can't do that stuff for you. And we will keep giving you updates along the way, all fundamentals, not like the latest hacks that go away in 30 days. Because Marko and I want to see you succeed. So if there's anything I can share, I've learned, give away all your knowledge for free. Give it away. There's no magic secrets or whatnot, right? People respect you. You build a reputation from doing that. Marko's learned this too. I mean, I thought he was 35, and I found he's way younger than that, by sharing his knowledge and expertise and demonstrating what he's done. But then charge, right? You can talk about how to resurface a floor or whatever it is and make YouTube videos and all that, but you charge for doing that. So Marko and I are charging for helping you build that in-house capability and being able to take control of your own marketing, right? All this other stuff's for free, but there's coaching as well. Of course, you understand that, right? Put all the stuff out there for free. People can learn how to do it. Go through all the guides. We're giving you all our guides, any SOPs, any things that you can have all of it, right? But if you want our help and want us to be personally involved, then we charge for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you heard it there from Dennis Yu himself. Just Google Dennis Yu, and you'll find anything you got to know.
Lean on the data, right?
Awesome. Cool, guys. Well, appreciate you guys checking this out until this far. If you got value from it, obviously subscribe to the different channels we have here and reach out to myself or Dennis, and we'll get you access to whatever you guys need. Any SOPs, anything like that, we'll get you access to that stuff.
Happy to.
Cool.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you for staying so long. I know your time's valuable.